The ultimatum. The crystalline towers of Zenthara Prime gleamed against the violet sky as Supreme Archon Vexthalan stood before the luminous assembly. His 4 eyes scanned the gathered representatives from 1,000 conquered worlds, each one bearing the silver collar of submission around their necks. The collars were more than symbols. They were neural restraints, ensuring compliance through pain should any subject species dare raise arms against the Empire. Vexthalan's voice resonated through the chamber, amplified by quantum harmonics. Esteemed vassals, we convene to discuss a peculiar anomaly. A species that has rejected our benevolent offer of integration. A holographic projection materialized above the assembly floor. It showed a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star in a backwater region designated as Sector 7749. The planet's designation was Terra, though its inhabitants called it Earth. Humans, Vexthalan pronounced the word with distaste. A bipedal species barely 300 cycles into their industrial age. We offered them the honor of joining our glorious empire 6 lunar cycles ago. They were given the standard terms. Surrender their weapons, accept our governance, wear the collars and contribute 20% of their population to our labor reserves. Ambassador Krelnix, our insectoid being from the conquered world of Chithos, clicked his mandibles nervously. Supreme Archon, what was their response? Vexthalan's facial tendrils darkened with anger. Their diplomat, a female named Cassandra Reeves, looked at our terms and said. He paused, accessing the recorded memory. She said, and I quote, "You can take your empire and shove it into the nearest black hole." Gasps rippled through the assembly. No species had ever refused the Empire's offer. Refusal meant only one thing. Furthermore, Vexthalan continued, when our enforcement fleet arrived to claim their world by force, they engaged us in combat. They destroyed 17 of our harvester ships with primitive kinetic weapons before we withdrew to reassess. The assembly erupted in confused chatter. Harvester ships were lightly armed, certainly, but they possessed shields capable of deflecting most pre-spaceflight weaponry. How is this possible? Asked Overseer Yilmara, a gelatinous being who governed 12 mining colonies. Human ingenuity, it seems, Vexthalan admitted grudgingly. They weaponized their atmospheric craft, loaded them with explosive payloads, and used their pilots as guided missiles. The humans call them kamikaze tactics. 17 pilots sacrificed themselves without hesitation. He brought up another hologram showing Admiral Marcus Thorne, the human military commander who had orchestrated the defense. The human's face was weathered, his eyes hard as steel. This is their war leader. He sent us a message after the engagement. The recording played. Thorne's voice was calm, almost conversational. To the Empire of 1,000 Suns, this is Admiral Marcus Thorne of the Terran Defense Coalition. You came to our world demanding submission. You threatened our children, our freedom, our very way of life. We have one response to tyrants no matter how advanced their technology. We fight. We don't care if you've conquered 1,000 worlds. You haven't conquered ours. Come back if you want, but know this, every inch of Earth will cost you blood. We will never kneel. Vexthalan deactivated the recording. The humans have fortified their planet. They've militarized every population center. Intelligence reports indicate they've unified their fragmented nations under a single war council. Something unprecedented in their history. What do you propose, Supreme Archon? Krelnix asked. I propose we show them why resistance is futile. I am assembling the Crimson Armada, 500 warships, including 3 Devastator-class planet breakers. We will reduce their major cities to ash, break their spirit, and those who survive will beg for the mercy of the collar. The assembled vassals murmured their approval. This was the Empire's way. Overwhelming force. Total domination. But Vexthalan noticed something troubling. In the eyes of some vassals, there was a flicker he hadn't seen before. Was it hope? Did these conquered species dare to imagine that humanity might succeed where they had failed? He dismissed the thought. Humanity would fall like all the others. It was simply a matter of time and applied force. In the depths of the assembly chamber, a small maintenance drone recorded everything. Its operator, a Chithos rebel named SYX-9, transmitted the intelligence to a hidden network of resistance cells scattered across the Empire. And from there, encrypted through a dozen relay points, the message reached Earth. Humanity now knew exactly what was coming. And they had 3 months to prepare for annihilation. The Defiant prepare. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility designated Bastion 1, Admiral Marcus Thorne stood before a holographic tactical display. Around him, the newly formed Terran Defense Coalition's High Command reviewed the intercepted intelligence from their alien informant. 500 warships, said General Amara Okonkwo, her Nigerian accent crisp despite the gravity of the situation. The largest military force humanity has ever faced. And we're supposed to stop it with what? Modified fighters and nuclear missiles. Dr. Hikaru Tanaka, head of the Emergency Technology Division, adjusted his glasses. Not quite, General. We've had 3 months and humanity has a peculiar talent. We adapt. Thorne nodded to Tanaka, who activated a series of subdisplays. Since the first contact, every nation has contributed their best scientists to Project Prometheus. We've been reverse engineering the debris from those 17 harvester ships. Show them the rail guns, Thorne ordered. Tanaka pulled up footage from a test facility in Australia. A massive installation, built into the side of a mountain, hummed with electromagnetic energy. A projectile the size of a school bus launched skyward at impossible speeds, disappearing into the atmosphere within seconds. Electromagnetic acceleration, Tanaka explained. We've built 47 planetary defense cannons across 6 continents. Each can fire a tungsten carbide penetrator at 0.03% light speed. The kinetic energy alone should punch through their shields based on our analysis of the Harvester wrecks. Commander Yuki Nakamura, representing the Pacific Defense Network, leaned forward. Should? Doctor, we need certainty, not probability. In war there are no certainties, Thorne interjected. Only calculated risks. Continue, Doctor. Tanaka brought up another schematic. We've also weaponized our satellite network. Every commercial satellite, every GPS unit, every weather monitor has been retrofitted with shaped explosive charges. When their fleet enters orbit, we'll turn our own infrastructure into a minefield. A one-time weapon, observed Colonel Dmitry Volkov, the Russian strategic weapons coordinator. After that, we lose global communications. If we lose this fight, we won't need communications, Thorne said flatly. What else? The civilian contribution, said Dr. Sarah Chin, the behavioral psychologist assigned to analyze human morale. She looked uncomfortable. Admiral, every major city has volunteers for suicide missions. The numbers are staggering. People are building bombs in their basements, rigging vehicles with explosives. They're calling themselves the Last Stand Brigade. Thorne's jaw tightened. The kamikaze pilots who died in the first engagement had become legends overnight. Now millions wanted to follow their example. We cannot allow mass civilian casualties, General Okonkwo stated firmly. We need to preserve our population. Tell that to them, Chin replied, pulling up social media feeds from around the world. The hashtag #NeverKneel was trending globally. Videos showed families teaching their children to fight, communities building bunkers, cities transformed into fortified strongholds. One video showed an elderly man in Tokyo, a survivor of the 20th century's wars, speaking to a crowd. My grandfather fought against tyranny. My father fought against tyranny. Now it comes from the stars, but the answer remains the same. We fight. We die free rather than live in chains. The sentiment was universal. From the favelas of Rio to the suburbs of Mumbai, from the Australian outback to the Canadian tundra, humanity had made its choice. Thorne closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. When he opened them, his resolve had hardened. Then we give them the fight they're preparing for. Dr. Tanaka, what's the status of Project Reaper? Tanaka hesitated. Admiral, Project Reaper is insane. That's not what I asked. Functional. We've converted 38 orbital platforms into kinetic bombardment systems. We've also attached thermonuclear devices to asteroid fragments in near-Earth orbit. If we can lure enough of their ships into the right positions, we turn our own solar system into a weapon, Volkov finished, a grim smile on his face. I like it. There's something else, said Commander Isabelle Laurent, the French intelligence officer. Our informant within the Empire, the Chithos rebel, has made contact again. He's not alone. There are resistance movements on 17 of the Empire's vassal worlds. They're offering to sabotage the Crimson Armada during its journey to Earth. Can we trust them? Okonkwo asked. They've risked everything to help us, Laurent replied. Their message said something that stuck with me. They wrote, for 1,000 years we've waited for someone to say no. Thank you for remembering what we forgot. How to be free. The room fell silent. Thorne straightened his uniform. Then we fight not just for Earth but for every species the Empire has enslaved. Commence final preparations. Send a message to all defense sectors. We have 3 months to turn humanity's cradle into the Empire's grave. As the High Command dispersed to their duties, Thorne remained, staring at the holographic Earth rotating slowly before him. Somewhere above, 500 warships were beginning their journey. The Empire expected an easy victory, another world to add to their collection. They had no idea they were about to learn humanity's most fundamental truth. We don't fight because we think we'll win. We fight because some things are worth dying for. The Crimson Armada. The Crimson Armada assembled in the void between stars, a fleet so massive it created gravitational eddies detectable from neighboring systems. Supreme Archon Vexthalen stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, a vessel 3 kilometers long, bristling with plasma cannons and quantum disruptors. Status report, he commanded. Fleet Commander Zarkoth, a veteran of 50 conquests, manipulated the tactical display. All 500 vessels accounted for Supreme Archon. The 3 Devastator-class planet breakers are positioned in Formation Delta. We are ready to initiate jump sequence. Vexthalen observed the fleet with satisfaction. Battlecruisers, corvettes, troop carriers and siege platforms, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The humans would see this armada and understand the futility of resistance. One thing troubles me, said Chief Science Officer Lintera, her sensor stalks twitching nervously. The quantum communications we've intercepted from Earth show no panic, no desperation. They're calm. Organized. Fear makes species irrational, Vexthalen dismissed. They're in denial. Soon they'll face reality. With respect, Supreme Archon, Lintera persisted. Every conquered species showed predictable patterns before submission. Mass evacuations, government collapses, religious hysteria. Humans show none of these markers. Instead, their industrial output has increased 300%. Their military recruitment is voluntary, yet they have more soldiers than they can equip. They're acting like... Like what? Vexthalen snapped. Like they expect to win. Zarkoth laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Let them believe their delusions. It will make the conquest more entertaining. The Armada engaged its faster-than-light drives, folding space-time around the massive fleet. The journey to Earth would take 3 months, during which the fleet would stop at resupply stations in conquered systems. What Vexthalen didn't know was that at every resupply station, small acts of sabotage were occurring. Chithos workers in the fuel refineries added microscopic impurities to the antimatter containers. Yilmarin technicians created subtle flaws in shield generator crystals. Krelnik's mechanics loosened critical components in weapon systems. Each act was tiny, undetectable by standard diagnostics. But across 500 ships, the cumulative effect would be devastating. X9, the Chithos rebel who had first contacted Earth, worked in the logistics bay of a resupply station. As he loaded cargo containers onto an Armada vessel, he allowed himself a small gesture of defiance. He traced a human symbol he'd learned from intercepted transmissions onto the container's surface. A simple circle with 2 lines. The letter V. For victory. Across the Empire, the oppressed species watched the Armada's progress. And for the first time in a millennium they allowed themselves to hope. Meanwhile, on Earth, the countdown to Armageddon continued. 67 days remaining. In Beijing, engineers completed the last of the planetary rail cannons, test-firing it into the Pacific Ocean. The impact created a tsunami warning, but the raw power demonstrated was worth it. 45 days remaining. In Geneva, the Terran Defense Coalition held its final strategic session. Admiral Thorne unveiled the battle plan, codenamed Operation Mongoose. The reference to a small mammal that killed cobras was not lost on anyone. Humanity was the mongoose. The Empire was the cobra. 30 days remaining. The Crimson Armada detected Earth's solar system on long-range sensors. Vexthalen studied the tactical data with growing satisfaction. The humans have built defensive installations but nothing that can withstand our assault. Prepare for orbital bombardment once we achieve position. 15 days remaining. Dr. Tanaka activated the final component of Project Prometheus, a network of quantum-entangled communicators that would allow instantaneous coordination across all defense forces, bypassing the light speed limitations that had plagued military communications for centuries. The technology was stolen from the harvester ship computers and perfected by human ingenuity. 7 days remaining. General Okonkwo addressed the global population via every broadcast medium. People of Earth, in 7 days the largest military force in known space will arrive at our world. They come to enslave us, to break our spirit, to make us forget what it means to be human. But we remember. We remember every ancestor who fought for freedom. We remember every sacrifice made so that we could stand here now and make our choice. We choose to fight. We choose to die free rather than live in chains. Humanity will never kneel. The response was unprecedented. Every city lit up with defiance. Bonfires burned on every continent, visible from space. Humanity was sending a message to the approaching fleet. We see you coming. And we're ready. One day remaining. Cassandra Reeves, the diplomat who had first rejected the Empire's demands, sat in her apartment in New York, watching the night sky. Somewhere beyond those stars, 500 warships were preparing to destroy everything she loved. She picked up a photograph of her daughter, evacuated to a deep bunker with millions of other children. Humanity's future, preserved in underground cities across the globe. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "Mommy has to fight now. But no matter what happens, remember, you bow to no one." The Crimson Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. The war for humanity's soul was about to begin. First blood. The Crimson Armada materialized like a crimson storm at the edge of Earth's solar system, their arrival sending ripples through space-time that set off alarms across every human installation from Mars to the Moon. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, Supreme Archon Vex Thalen observed the primitive third planet through his tactical display. Commence Standard Invasion Protocol. Broadcast the final surrender demand. A transmission blasted across all human frequencies. Vex Thalen's translated voice boomed, "Humans of Earth, your defiance ends now. You have one final opportunity. Surrender unconditionally, accept the collars, and your casualties will be minimal. Refuse and we will reduce your civilization to ash. You have one of your hours to decide." In Bastion 1, Admiral Thorne listened to the ultimatum without expression. Around him, the High Command waited for his response. "Send our reply," Thorne ordered. Cassandra Reeves stepped forward, the same diplomat who had first rejected the Empire. She faced the camera, her voice steady and clear. "Supreme Archon Vex Thalen, 3 months ago I told you where to shove your empire. Our position hasn't changed. You want Earth? Come and take it." Vex Thalen's facial tendrils flushed dark purple with rage. "Insolent creatures. Fleet Commander Zarkoth, begin the assault. I want their orbital installations destroyed within the hour. By your command, Supreme Archon." The Armada began its approach, engines burning bright as they accelerated toward Earth. The 3 Devastator-class planet breakers took point positions, their massive weapons charging with enough energy to vaporize continents. "Enemy fleet entering weapons range in 3 minutes, reported Commander Nakamura from the Pacific Defense Network. Thorne studied the holographic tactical display, watching 500 ships arrange themselves in textbook invasion formation. "They're arrogant. Good. Let them come closer. All rail cannon installations, hold fire. Satellite network, stand by. Admiral, they're powering weapons," warned General Okonkwo. "If those planet breakers fire, they won't get the chance. Trust the plan." The Armada crossed into orbital range. Vex Thalen smiled triumphantly. "Target their largest population centers. Fire when ready." That's when everything went wrong. "Supreme Archon." Lintera shrieked. "Energy spike detected. Multiple energy spikes. All across their planet." The 47 rail cannons fired simultaneously. Tungsten carbide penetrators, each weighing 5 tons and traveling at 3% of light speed, screamed upward through Earth's atmosphere. The kinetic energy was apocalyptic. The first salvo struck the Armada's forward screen of corvettes. Shields meant to deflect plasma and lasers were useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The penetrators punched through shields like they weren't there, tore through hulls, and exited the other side, leaving catastrophic damage in their wake. 17 ships exploded in the first 3 seconds. Evasive maneuvers. Zarkoth roared, but the Armada's formation was too tight, designed for overwhelming firepower, not maneuverability. The rail cannons fired again. And again. Each firing cycle took 30 seconds, but the devastation was extraordinary. Ships that had conquered worlds found themselves crippled by weapons that were essentially rocks thrown very, very fast. "Return fire," Vex Thalen commanded. "Destroy those installations." The Armada's weapons opened up, plasma beams and quantum disruptors lancing down toward Earth's surface. But the rail cannons were buried deep in mountains, protected by hundreds of meters of rock and advanced shielding stolen from the harvester ships. Some installations took damage. 3 were destroyed. But the rest kept firing. "Phase 2, Thorne ordered calmly. "Activate the satellite network." Across Earth's orbit, thousands of satellites that had provided communications, weather data, and GPS navigation suddenly became weapons. Shaped explosive charges detonated, sending fragments of metal and circuitry in all directions at orbital velocities. The Armada found itself flying through a debris field moving at 17,000 miles per hour. Smaller ships suffered catastrophic impacts. Even larger vessels took damage as fragments shredded sensor arrays, punctured fuel lines and destroyed external weapons batteries. "This is impossible," Vexthalen shouted. "They're pre-space flight. How are they doing this?" Lintera frantically analyzed the human weapons. "Supreme Archon, their technology is crude but effective. They're using kinetic weapons. We haven't faced those in centuries. Our shields are optimized against energy weapons." The 3 Devastator-class planet breakers pushed forward, their massive bulk absorbing damage that would destroy smaller ships. Their main weapons charged, targeting the North American continent. "Admiral, planet breakers charging weapons." Commander Nakamura's voice was urgent. "Project Reaper," Thorne said quietly. "Execute now." In orbit, disguised among the debris of satellites, 38 platforms activated. Each platform consisted of a simple frame holding an asteroid fragment the size of a house, with a thermonuclear warhead attached. The warheads detonated. The explosions didn't damage the Armada directly. Instead, they propelled the asteroid fragments downward towards specific coordinates. But these coordinates had been carefully calculated. The asteroids weren't aimed at Earth. They were aimed at the Armada. Traveling at tremendous speeds, augmented by nuclear explosions, the asteroids slammed into the planet breakers. One struck the Eternal Devastator amidships, the impact creating a shock wave that rippled through the entire 3-kilometer hull. The ship's back broke, reactor containment failed, and it exploded with the force of a small sun. The second planet breaker, Worldender, took an asteroid strike to its forward section. The ship survived, but its main weapon was destroyed, along with half its crew. The third, Extinction's Call, managed to fire its weapon before an asteroid strike crippled its engines. The plasma beam lanced down toward Earth, targeting the Sao Paulo metropolitan area. At Bastion 1, every screen showed the beam descending. 20 million people in its path. Then the beam hit something unexpected. A magnetic field, artificially generated and powerful beyond anything the Empire had seen, deflected the beam 30 degrees off course. It struck the Atlantic Ocean instead, vaporizing billions of tons of water and creating a steam explosion visible from orbit, but causing 0 human casualties. "Magnetic deflection grids," Dr. Tanaka explained to the stunned High Command. "We built them around every major city. Powered by fusion reactors. It'll only work once per grid, but it worked." On the Eternal Dominion, Vexthalen stared at his tactical display in disbelief. In 15 minutes of battle, humanity had destroyed or crippled 93 ships. The primitive species had just bloodied the greatest military force in the Empire. "All ships withdraw to safe distance," he ordered. "Regroup and reassess." As the Armada pulled back, licking its wounds, a transmission came from Earth. Admiral Thorne's face appeared, his expression hard. "You wanted to see if we'd kneel, Supreme Archon. Now you know. We don't kneel. We don't surrender. And we don't lose our home without a fight. This is just the beginning." The transmission ended. Vexthalen stood in silence, his 4 eyes fixed on the blue-green planet that had just humiliated the Empire's finest fleet. For the first time in his long life, the Supreme Archon felt something he'd never experienced before. Fear. The hornet's nest. Supreme Archon Vexthalen paced the bridge of the Eternal Dominion like a caged predator, his facial tendrils twitching with barely contained rage. The tactical display showed the Armada's current status. 93 ships destroyed or too damaged to fight, another 147 requiring repairs before they could engage in combat operations. Nearly half his fleet, crippled by a species that had never left their own solar system. "This is unacceptable," he hissed. Fleet Commander Zarkoth stood rigidly at attention, knowing that failure in the Empire often meant execution. "They ambushed us with primitive weapons. We weren't prepared for kinetic bombardment. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't," Vexthalen snapped. "We'll hold position here, repair what we can and adapt our tactics. Recalibrate all shields to account for solid projectiles. Deploy sensor nets to detect any additional surprises. And prepare boarding teams." "Boarding teams, Supreme Archon? If we cannot break them from orbit, we'll land ground forces and crush them continent by continent. Begin scanning for optimal landing zones." As the Armada regrouped, humanity used the reprieve to prepare for the next phase. In Bastion 1, Admiral Thorne reviewed casualty reports. The battle had cost them dearly, 3 rail cannon installations destroyed, the entire satellite network expended, and the magnetic grids around major cities drained of power. "We bloodied them, but we can't do it again," General Okonkwo stated bluntly. "Our orbital defenses are spent." "Then we transition to Phase 3, Thorne replied. "Dr. Tanaka, status on the atmosphere traps?" Tanaka brought up a global map dotted with red markers. "All major cities and strategic locations are rigged. If they attempt atmospheric entry, they'll find Earth's air itself has become a weapon." Commander Nakamura looked puzzled. "How do you weaponize atmosphere?" "Nanoscale metallic particles suspended in the air around population centers," Tanaka explained. "Normally inert, but when exposed to the specific energy signature of their ship engines, they ignite. Their ships will essentially be flying through gasoline vapor." "Diabolical," Colonel Volkov said with approval. "But what about ground forces? Once they land, they'll have numerical superiority." "Which is why we're not fighting them conventionally," said Commander Laurent, pulling up deployment plans. "Every military on Earth has been studying asymmetric warfare. We're going to use tactics from Vietnam, Afghanistan, urban resistance movements. We make every street a battlefield, every building a fortress." "Guerrilla warfare," Okonkwo mused. "Against an enemy with advanced technology." "Advanced technology requires infrastructure," Laurent countered. "Command and control, supply lines, communication networks. All vulnerable to determined insurgents." A communication alert interrupted them. It was SYX-9, their Chithos contact within the Empire. The insectoid's image appeared, speaking hurriedly in encrypted bursts. "Admiral Thorne, the sabotage network reports that the Armada's shields are being recalibrated. But we've introduced additional flaws in their targeting systems and troop transport vessels. When they attempt planetary assault, expect their coordination to be compromised." "You've risked much to help us," Thorne said. "Why?" X9's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. "Because for 1,000 years my people have worn collars. We've forgotten what it means to be free. You're showing us how to remember. Whatever happens, Admiral, know that you've already won something precious. You've given the Empire's slaves hope." The connection terminated. 48 hours later, the Armada made its move. Vexthalen had reorganized the fleet into a more dispersed formation, with point defense systems active and shields recalibrated. 260 functional warships began their approach to Earth. "Deploy the atmosphere traps," Thorne ordered. As the Armada's troop transports descended into Earth's atmosphere, they encountered the metallic particle clouds. The particles, designed to be attracted to specific energy emissions, swarmed toward the ship's engines. Then they ignited. Explosions rippled across the sky as dozens of transport vessels became flying infernos. Pilots attempted emergency ascents, but the fires spread too quickly. Ships crashed into oceans, deserts, and forests, scattering their troops far from intended landing zones. But not all transports were destroyed. Enough made it through to deploy ground forces at 17 locations across the globe. The Empire's soldiers emerged from their ships in the ruins of what had been Seoul, South Korea. Commander Thaxsiler of the Empire's elite guard surveyed the devastated cityscape with his thermal sensors. The city appeared abandoned. "Spread out," he ordered his battalion. "Standard occupation protocol. Secure the area and establish a command post." His soldiers advanced through empty streets, their plasma rifles at the ready. The silence was unnerving. Then the first shot rang out. A human sniper, positioned 3 blocks away in a collapsed building, fired a high-powered rifle. The round struck a soldier's helmet, and though his shields absorbed the impact, the force knocked him down. More shots followed from different directions. The Empire soldiers couldn't locate the shooters. They were firing from concealed positions, taking single shots, then relocating. "Return fire," Thaxsiler commanded, but his soldiers were shooting at shadows. Then the real attack began. The streets exploded. Humans had rigged every sewer, every building foundation, every abandoned vehicle with explosives. Remote detonations created a hellscape of fire and shrapnel. Empire soldiers, trained for conventional warfare against massed armies, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to mass. "They're everywhere and nowhere," one soldier screamed before a triggered mine sent him flying. In Paris, Empire troops encountered resistance fighters who'd transformed the catacombs into an underground fortress. The soldiers entered the tunnels in pursuit and were met with coordinated ambushes, humans who knew every passage, every hiding spot, using the darkness and confined spaces to negate the Empire's technological advantages. In Cairo, resistance fighters lured Empire forces into the narrow streets of the old city, where their heavy weapons and vehicles became liabilities. Molotov cocktails rained from windows. IEDs destroyed patrols. Every doorway could hide death. Across 17 battlefields, the pattern repeated. Humanity refused to engage in open battle. They struck from hiding, inflicted casualties, and vanished before the Empire could respond. This is not warfare. Thaxcyler raged as another explosion tore through his ranks. This is cowardice. A human voice responded over the local communication frequencies, speaking accented English that the translation devices rendered clearly. This is survival. You came to our home. You threatened our families. Did you expect us to line up and make it easy? Thaxcyler tried to triangulate the transmission, but it bounced through multiple relays. Show yourselves and fight. Laughter echoed through the channel. We are fighting. You're just losing. Another explosion. More casualties. In orbit, Vexthalen watched his ground forces struggle with mounting fury. This is taking too long. Deploy the pacification drones. Gas the cities if necessary. But when the drones launched, they encountered another surprise. Human civilians, armed with simple radio jammers built from instructions shared globally over the internet, disrupted the drones' control signals. The machines fell from the sky, repurposed by human engineers into surveillance equipment or simply dismantled for parts. These humans are like insects. Vexthalen roared. We crush one and 10 more appear. Chief Science Officer Lintera reviewed the battlefield data. Supreme Archon, we're suffering a casualty rate of 15 to 1. For every human killed, we lose 15 soldiers. This is unsustainable. Then we escalate, Vexthalen decided. If they won't fight conventionally, we'll force them to. Target the bunkers where they've hidden their young. Broadcast our intention. Let them choose between their children and their pride. But before the order could be executed, alarms blared across the Eternal Dominion. Supreme Archon. Multiple ships reporting system failures. Weapons malfunctions, shield collapses, engine destabilizations. The sabotage, carefully introduced over months by the Empire's own oppressed workers, finally reached critical mass. The Armada, already wounded, began to tear itself apart from within. The Empire fractures. The Eternal Dominion's bridge descended into chaos. Damage reports flooded in from across the Armada as ships that had survived humanity's initial assault now suffered catastrophic system failures. Vexthalen watched his tactical display in horror as the indicators for 57 vessels turned from green to red. Engineering report, he commanded. Chief Engineer Mordax's voice crackled with panic. Supreme Archon, we're experiencing cascading failures across multiple systems. Shield generators, weapons arrays, even life support on some vessels. The failures don't match any known pattern. It's as if. As if what? Vexthalen demanded. As if the ships were designed to fail, Supreme Archon. Realization struck like a physical blow. Sabotage. Not recent, but methodical, introduced over months during the Armada's preparation and journey. The Empire's own vassal species, the conquered workers who maintained the fleet, had betrayed them. On the surface of Earth, the Empire's ground forces received the news of the fleet's troubles with growing desperation. Cut off from orbital support, facing an enemy that refused to fight by any recognized rules of warfare, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare. In the ruins of Sol, Commander Thaxcyler gathered his surviving officers. Of the original battalion of 500, barely 200 remained combat effective. We need extraction, he stated flatly. This mission is unsustainable. The fleet is compromised, his second-in-command replied. We're on our own. A human voice interrupted their encrypted channel. Somehow, impossibly, the humans had cracked their communications. Commander Thaxcyler, this is Colonel Park Minjun of the Korean Defense Force. You're surrounded, outnumbered, and cut off from support. I'm offering you a choice your empire never gave us. Surrender and live. Thaxcyler's pride warred with his survival instinct. The Empire did not surrender. But the Empire had also never abandoned its soldiers to die on a hostile world. What guarantee do we have? He asked. The same guarantee you gave us. None, Park replied honestly. But we don't execute prisoners. We don't enslave them. We treat them according to the laws of war. Something your empire might want to learn about. Thaxcyler made his decision. All units stand down. We surrender. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. Empire soldiers, trained for conquest but unprepared for the brutality of asymmetric warfare, laid down their weapons. Some fought to the last, their programming too strong to overcome. but most chose survival. In orbit, the sabotage continued its devastating work. The world ender, already crippled from the asteroid impact, suffered a catastrophic antimatter containment failure. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface, a new star that blazed for 3 seconds before fading. Vexthalon stood alone on the bridge, his command staff dead or incapacitated by cascading system failures. Through the viewport he could see the armada disintegrating. Ships listed dead in space, others broke apart as structural integrity failed, some simply went dark as their reactors shut down. A transmission reached him from an unexpected source. The face that appeared was Krelnix, the insectoid ambassador from the Luminous Assembly, but he no longer wore his collar. Supreme Archon, Krelnix spoke, and his voice carried no deference. Or should I say, former Supreme Archon. While you were busy trying to break humanity, we've been breaking our chains. The resistance has spread to 400 worlds. Your empire is falling. You dare? Vexthalon began. I dare because humanity dared, Krelnix interrupted. They showed us that tyrants bleed. That advanced technology means nothing against the will to be free. Your armada is destroyed not just by human weapons, but by every species you've enslaved. We put the flaws in your ships. We sabotaged your supplies. We did what you taught us was impossible. We fought back. The transmission ended. Vexthalon looked at his dying flagship, at the wreckage of his fleet, at the defiant blue-green planet that had destroyed everything he'd built. And for the first time in his life, the Supreme Archon understood defeat. On Earth, Admiral Thorn received the surrender transmission from the Eternal Dominion. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the cost had been severe. 17 cities lay in ruins. Casualties numbered in the hundreds of thousands. The rail cannons were destroyed, the satellite network expended, and Earth's infrastructure damaged beyond quick repair. But they had won. General Okonkwo stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. We did it. Against everything we actually did it. Not just us, Thorn replied, pulling up transmissions from across the Empire. They did it too. Every enslaved species that chose to remember what freedom meant. Dr. Chin brought urgent news. Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from 17 different species. They want to talk. They want to know how we did it. Thorn smiled wearily. Tell them the truth. We didn't do it through superior technology or brilliant tactics. We did it because we remembered a simple truth that the Empire tried to make the galaxy forget. Freedom isn't given. It's taken. And once you decide you'd rather die free than live in chains, no empire in the universe can stop you. Across the Empire, the message spread. And one by one, world by world, the collars came off. 1,000 suns rise. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the former Supreme Archon Vexthalon stood in a cell designed for his species-specific needs. Adequate temperature, proper atmosphere, even entertainment provided. It was comfortable, almost luxurious compared to the cells the Empire had used for prisoners. He hated it precisely because it was humane. Admiral Thorn entered the cell carrying a data pad. Since the battle, Thorn had become something he'd never expected. A symbol. Not just for humanity but for every species that had suffered under Imperial rule. You've come to gloat, Vexthalon said, his 4 eyes fixing on the human. No, Thorn replied, sitting across from the former dictator. I've come because we need to understand each other. The war is over, but the aftermath has just begun. He activated the data pad, showing images from across the former empire. Worlds in celebration, yes, but also worlds in chaos. The Empire had maintained order through fear, and with that fear removed, ancient conflicts had reignited. 400 worlds have declared independence, Thorn continued. But independence isn't the same as freedom. On Yilmar, 3 factions are fighting a civil war. On Chithos, the rebels who helped us are being hunted by those who still believe in the Empire's stability. The galaxy you knew is dying, but what comes next isn't clear. And you want my help? Vexthalon laughed bitterly. I conquered those worlds. I enslaved their people. Why would they listen to me? They wouldn't. But they might listen to this. Thorn showed him another image. The Luminous Assembly reconvened without collars, with representatives from every former vassal world. We're building something new. Not an empire, but a coalition. The Terran Coalition Alliance. Voluntary membership, mutual defense, shared technology and resources. Naive, Vexthalon scoffed. It will collapse within a decade. Species are too different, too divided by history and biology. Only force maintains order. Maybe, Thorn acknowledged. But we're going to try anyway. Because the alternative, empire, We know where that leads. You showed us. He stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. We've been analyzing the data from your fleet. The sabotage network that destroyed the Armada? It was coordinated across 17 species who had never met, never communicated directly, but who all shared one thing. They'd been oppressed long enough to recognize that freedom was worth any risk. That's more powerful than any weapon you ever built. After Thorn left, Vex Thalen sat in silence, contemplating the ruins of everything he'd believed. The empire of 1,000 suns had fallen, brought down not by superior force, but by a simple idea, that no being should kneel before another. On Earth, reconstruction continued at a breakneck pace. The battle damage was extensive, but humanity had faced extinction and survived. Rebuilding cities seemed trivial by comparison. Dr. Tanaka's teams were already sharing Earth's defensive technology with other species, while learning from the advanced sciences the Empire had hoarded. Cassandra Reeves, the diplomat who had first told the Empire what to do with their offer, now served as humanity's chief negotiator in the new Terran Coalition alliance. She stood before the reformed Luminous Assembly, no longer a gathering of the conquered, but a parliament of free peoples. We propose a charter, she announced, her voice carrying to representatives from across the former empire. 7 principles that will guide our alliance. First, no member world shall hold another in subjugation. Second, all sapient beings have the right to self-determination. Third, disputes shall be resolved through dialogue, not force. Fourth, technology and knowledge shall be shared freely. Fifth, each species' culture and beliefs must be respected. Sixth, mutual defense against external threats. And seventh, any member may withdraw from the alliance without penalty. Krelnix, now Prime Speaker of the Assembly, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. These principles are admirable, Ambassador Reeves. But what happens when they conflict? When one species' culture demands practices another finds abhorrent? Then we talk, Reeves replied simply. We debate, we compromise, we find solutions. It won't be easy. It won't be perfect. But it will be free. The vote was nearly unanimous. 317 worlds joined the Terran Coalition Alliance in that first session. Others would join in the months and years that followed. But not all the former empire welcomed the new order. On the outer rim, hardline factions loyal to the old ways gathered. They called themselves the Remnant, and they believed that order through strength was the only path to galactic stability. They would become humanity's next challenge, but that was a problem for tomorrow. Today was for remembering the fallen and celebrating survival. In Seoul, a memorial was unveiled honoring the civilians and soldiers who had died defending Earth. Similar memorials appeared in every city that had seen battle. But the largest memorial was different. It honored not just humans but every being who had died fighting for freedom. Chithos rebels, Yilmarin saboteurs, Krelnix resistance fighters. All remembered, all honored. Commander Thaxiler, the Empire soldier who had surrendered in Seoul, attended the memorial service. He wore no shackles, no collar. Colonel Park Minjun had been true to his word. Prisoners were treated humanely, given the opportunity to work, to learn, even to apply for citizenship if they chose. I don't understand you, Thaxiler admitted to Park as they stood before the memorial wall. We came to conquer your world. We killed your people. Yet you treat us with dignity. Park considered the question carefully. My grandfather survived a war where prisoners were treated brutally. He taught me that the measure of a civilization isn't how it treats its friends, but how it treats its enemies. If we'd enslaved you, made you wear collars, we'd have become what we fought against. We'd have proven the Empire right, that force is all that matters. The Empire was wrong, Thaxiler said quietly. It was the first time he'd admitted it aloud. I see that now. But I don't know what I am if not a soldier of the Empire. Then figure it out, Park replied. That's what freedom means. The right to decide who you want to be. High above Earth, in the newly established orbital station Unity, Admiral Thorne met with his former high command, now the core of the Alliance's joint military structure. The screens showed the current state of the galaxy. Green for Alliance members, yellow for neutral systems, and red for Remnant-controlled space. The Remnant is gathering strength, General Okonkwo reported. Intelligence suggests they're building a fleet. Not as large as the Armada, but still formidable. They'll test us, Colonel Volkov predicted. Try to prove that the Alliance is weak, that only the old Empire maintained order. Let them come, Commander Nakamura said firmly. We've beaten them once. We'll do it again. But Thorne shook his head. Fighting isn't always the answer. Yes, we'll defend ourselves if attacked. But our real weapon isn't military might, it's the idea we represent. Every day the Alliance succeeds, every world that prospers in freedom, we prove the Empire's philosophy wrong. That's how we win. Dr. Chin, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Admiral, we're receiving applications from species who want to join the Alliance, but they're not from former Empire worlds. They're from independent systems that heard what happened here. They want to be part of what we're building. Thorn smiled. Then we welcome them. This alliance isn't just for those the Empire conquered. It's for anyone who believes that freedom is worth protecting. Years passed. The Terran Coalition alliance grew to encompass over 700 worlds. Technology advanced rapidly as species shared knowledge freely. The Remnant launched several attacks, but each time the alliance's combined forces, not just human but Chithos, Yilmarin, Krelniks, and dozens of other species, repelled them. Slowly, even Remnant worlds began to see the prosperity and peace the alliance offered. One by one they too joined, until the Remnant was little more than a handful of diehard systems clinging to a dead philosophy. On the 10th anniversary of the Battle of Earth, a massive celebration was held at Unity Station. Representatives from all Alliance worlds attended, including some surprising guests. Vex Thalen, now elderly and frail, was released from his comfortable cell to address the assembly. Many had argued against allowing him to speak, but Thorn had insisted. The former Supreme Archon stood before the gathered representatives, looking at the faces of species he had once enslaved. I built an empire of 1,000 suns, he began, his voice weak but clear. I believed that order required submission, that peace required chains. I was wrong. He paused, gathering strength. Humanity taught the galaxy something I tried to make you forget. That freedom is not chaos, that diversity is not weakness, that voluntary cooperation is stronger than forced compliance. The empire I built lasted 1,000 years. This alliance you've built will outlast it 100 times over, because it's founded on choice, not compulsion. The chamber was silent. I cannot undo the suffering I caused, Vex Thalen continued, but I can acknowledge the truth. Humanity didn't just defeat the empire. They showed us a better way. For that, even from one who lost everything, thank you. He sat down, and after a moment of stunned silence, the chamber erupted not in applause, but in a traditional Chithos gesture of forgiveness. A soft clicking of mandibles that spread through the assembly, species after species joining in their own ways. Admiral Marcus Thorn, now retired and serving as a historical consultant, watched from the observation gallery. Beside him sat his granddaughter, young Maya Thorn, who had been born 3 months before the battle and now studied the diplomatic arts. Grandfather, she asked, how did you know you would win? Thorn smiled. I didn't. We could have lost. Probably should have, by any logical calculation. But we had something the Empire didn't understand. We knew what we were fighting for. Not territory, not resources, not pride. We fought for the right to choose our own destiny. That's worth dying for. More importantly, it's worth living for. He looked out at the assembly, at the representatives of 700 free worlds, and felt a profound sense of peace. The empire of 1,000 suns fell because it forgot a fundamental truth. You can conquer a world, but you cannot conquer the spirit. And once that spirit awakens, once beings remember what it means to be free, no force in the universe can make them kneel again. Maya considered this, then smiled. So we won because we refused to kneel? We won because we showed the galaxy how to stand up, Thorn corrected gently. And once the galaxy stood, it never wanted to kneel again. Outside the station, Earth rotated peacefully below, its scars healed, its people thriving. And beyond Earth, across 700 worlds, species that had spent millennia in chains now walked in freedom, building a future that even a week ago would have seemed impossible. The empire of 1,000 suns had fallen. But in its place, 1,000 suns had risen, each one a free world, each one a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refused to kneel. And in the darkness between the stars, other empires, other would-be conquerors, learned a valuable lesson, that humanity and those they inspired would never submit. That freedom, once tasted, is a force more powerful than any weapon. That the species who refused to kneel had changed the galaxy forever. The age of empires was over. The age of alliance had begun.